The Ripple SEC lawsuit was appealed by the SEC. Because the SEC was forced to provide several shocking revelations in its petition, I want to go through them in this video. I want to show how weak the Secretary's argument seems on appeal through the highlights of this video, because I believe many lawyers who have been following this situation were astonished by some of the things the SEC was obliged to say here. But before we get into that, I'd like to talk about a big new Ripple partner that we only recently discovered despite much conjecture. We only recently received proof that is correct in this video, in which I will explain in detail who that new partner is and how their relationship would affect Ripple and XRP in the future. To minimize any confusion, I'd want to quickly go over a brand new change that will be made to the XRP ledger at the start of this video. Nobody expected this to happen, and even the greatest academics in this subject, such as Crypto Eerie, who truly focused on the technical aspects, were completely unprepared for it. So what's going on is that it appears like a change was simply made to the XRP ledger. It is highly exciting to incorporate oracles, because an oracle essentially allows a blockchain to access data from the outside world. Essentially, these may involve variables like market pricing and exchange rates, interest rates, and even the weather. A decentralized blockchain is linked to this centralized reality. This is truly very exciting. This will enable tokenization, since it will supply the XRP ledger with a slew of new features that many people never believed would be conceivable. A more seamless user experience and the creation of far more sophisticated solutions built on top of the ledger. Such things will begin to accurately support considerable growth on the ledger. For a long time, the XRP ledger lacked functionality and programmability. If you weren't designing a payment application, there wasn't much for you to work with because it was only good for payments. Overall, the ledger will be considerably easier for programmers to work with. I feel that with the recent legal clarity we received, the XRP ledger will become a hub for some of the top applications being built in the cryptocurrency market, which the XRP ledger hasn't had without even having a sizable developer community. The XRP ledger has risen to become one of the top goods in terms of cryptocurrency market price, but I believe that innovations like oracles and smart contracts will dramatically alter this in the future. Overall, I'm pretty excited about this. Nobody expected this, but it appears like oracles, NFTs, AMMs, and smart contracts will soon cover the XRP ledger. The XRP ledger we have now is essentially entirely different from what we had 2 years ago. It's really exciting, but before I do, let me quickly review a recent announcement. It's amusing that this came directly from Uphold, but the truth is that Ripple has established a formal cooperation with the Bank of International Settlements for cross-border payments and interoperability, the Central Bank of Ireland, and the European Central Bank for cross-border payments and interoperability. The Bank of International Settlements is the current central bank. They are essentially a governing body for all of the world's largest central banks, and they have over 68 different board members from central banks all around the world. We all understand why the BIS is collaborating with Ripple. It's because of XRP that this situation is so intriguing. However, since the BIS is directly partnering with Ripple, they might have selected Swift if they merely wanted to collaborate with a messaging provider, but they chose Ripple to have access to the virtual currency. This demonstrates that all central banks who interact with this will now be permitted to engage with Ripple and use XRP. The BIS is reaching out to engage with Ripple, implying that there is much wider support for cryptocurrencies at these extremely powerful institutions, albeit this does not imply that all of these central banks will do so. For a long time, it was assumed that central banks and organizations, such as the BIS, would never deal with cryptocurrencies because they were too hazardous, had no practical application, and provided no useful function. These groups appear to be effective. Overall, this is excellent news since it shows that these huge institutions are collaborating with the private sector rather than battling it and striving to develop their internal answers. Because they recognize they will be unable to construct these products or produce items that are superior to cryptocurrency solutions, BIS is now partnering with Ripple and others. Let me just caution you that others will say that XRP is not engaged and that they are partnering with Ripple for one specific reason. Ripple's hidden weapon is this cryptocurrency. I'd like to move on to the actual events that transpired, as the corporation is doing so in the expectation of one day acquiring access to it. The SEC effectively came clean on the Ripple SEC case yesterday, since they were very startling in the second filing, and admitted for the first time that it no longer considers XRP to be a security. Surprisingly, the SEC stated in its submission that it never intended to refer to XRP as a security, but right here they assert that it is nothing more than computer code. This is amusing since, as we all know, that SEC was arguing the exact opposite over a year ago, but they changed their position because they realized their previous arguments made them look like complete morons. According to John Deaton, despite the obvious contradictions in their allegations in this case, that SEC lawyers appear to have a personality problem. I mean, I agree today, even though I find it extremely embarrassing. I also believe it is a significant improvement from never making similar points in the past. They aren't even claiming that XRP is a security. That is an unexpected acknowledgement from the SEC. I mean, it clearly shows that the defense team's previous statements in this case were made in poor faith. They were only seeking to scare the market. They were hoping to create a black swan event that would damage XRP. What the SEC was an asset. The SEC is required to deviate from that in this situation. They are no longer seeking to claim that XRP is a security, and because this is extremely fascinating. I do own one. Is the SEC simply rejecting that XRP is a security, or is there more to it? If that's the case, it's practically admitting that all cryptocurrencies aren't securities. I don't see how this will help their case against Coinbase, where they are once again attempting to describe the assets as securities. In any event, this comment is somewhat striking. It was without a doubt the most shocking item we saw in this case. However, there was one more tiny detail. In SEC's case, they argue that reasonable judges can differ on whether crypto transactions on exchanges can be investment contracts. Therefore, they're saying, okay, well, it's kind of funny because in all of these other cases, they're arguing that the assets or securities that Brad Garlinghouse and Chris Larsen should have known since 2013 that their sales of XRP on these exchanges were 100 security transactions, even though they acknowledge that the situation is still very much in flux. And they are worried about how the judges would react to it. The SEC is contending in its argument that Brad Garlinghouse and Chris Larsen should have known from the outset, even though they claim it is currently exceedingly uncertain and difficult to know, and that we should wait to hear more. What the court finds is a complete farce. It's humiliating, and the reason it's so bad is that we've seen so many scammers go right past. While the SEC tries to punish two of the greatest CDs in the Bitcoin sector, people who have been completely accountable since the beginning. There's nothing there with the borderline fraud case. In essence, Sam Bankman liberated people like Duckwin. The SEC is punishing Brad Garlinghouse and Chris Larsen for no apparent reason. American innovators should not be regarded in this manner, and we should not criticize them for doing their best. Instead, consider this the ripple effect. The SEC litigation has been ongoing for 3.5 years, and little unfavorable ripple evidence has been offered. The ripple effect has almost always been perfectly fine, until I saw a single paper that made me think, oh, Brad Garlinghouse, you should never have said that. It's difficult for me to believe they were working discreetly on this. The SEC gave us the sense that we would discover a plethora of documents and other heinous material about what Brad and Chris were up to. Essentially, we're very bullish on Ripple, and XRP found nothing else. The SEC's attempt to penalize these individuals purely out of spite is a complete farce, when major organizations like the BS and central banks around the world openly acknowledge that this company is the real deal and that they are solving a significant problem. It's embarrassing. It is unusual for an American regulator to treat a corporation in this manner. The SEC, on the other hand, is merely seeking to slow the company down and punish Brad Garlinghouse and Chris Larsen for being exceptional executives, but I do not doubt that this will fail. Spectacularly, it is humiliating for the SEC to have to renounce all of its previous assertions and admit that they were in breach of the law and logic. I'm not sure how Judge Torres could take this seriously because it's a complete farce in any case. Gentlemen, I greatly appreciate your presence, and I hope this update was entertaining. Please remember to like and subscribe if you did.